So what on earth was that? Gone are the days of having full faith that a Disney animated movie is going to be one of the best, most magical, most epic and most emotional things that you've ever seen. As if anything, they're becoming more and more disappointing and annoyingly are on the other end of that brilliant spectrum. Now I can see what they were trying to do, and I definitely think it's worth applauding them on the diversity in terms of ethnicity as well as LGBT representation. But like I've always said in my reviews, I think that if you want to send a message to your audience, it needs to be underpinned by a brilliant storyline at the forefront, as audiences don't want to be lectured to in their escapist entertainment. That's also the way in which you make causes and representation even more successful, like how Black Panther and Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio did it, and it worked so spectacularly. Also, I know they were trying to do something different in terms of not having a conventional evil person and wanted to teach people about environmentalism, and all of that is fine and innovative and important too, but it can't be the be all and end all, as like I said, the film didn't have anything entertaining or enjoyable enough in its premise for those different approaches to be successful, which was ultimately pretty disappointing as it wasn't successful in communicating the points that it wanted to tell. I mean, the film's jokes didn't even work really well. The humor on a whole was just so lame. The family dynamic wasn't one that you felt invested in, and the supposedly shocking moments were pretty lackluster, and you're just left scratching your head as to where on earth all of the awe-inspired storytelling of Disney's classic tales have disappeared to. I mean, Raya the Last Dragon was absolutely exceptional, so they clearly still have it in them, but I don't know how nobody picked up on this throughout the entire production process of this film. This is also clearly reflected in the fact that the film unfortunately wasn't able to break even from a box office perspective. If it's trying to be positioned as an epic tale of adventure storytelling like Treasure Planet and Atlantis, then I think it's pretty outrageous to be compared to those movies personally, as if you've seen my other reviews for those two films, which I'll link in the description box below, then you'll know I absolutely loved them, as they were just so awesome from both a storytelling point of view to having epic stakes, the phenomenal characters, and you were just so captured in this epic and stupendous intergalactic adventure, which this film didn't achieve at all. It's really disappointing, as like I said, I loved those films and I would have loved to have had another contender to join their awesome ranks, but this one definitely isn't it. I mean, the voice talents did as good of a job as they could have done, given the script that they were provided with, but like I said, it wasn't fun, it wasn't funny, it wasn't mesmerizing, and the dialogue was storyline beats that you have seen better done elsewhere and wrapped around a pretty weak overarching storyline. So let's dive into that a little bit. So the concept of the world's resources depleting and what a civilization would have to do in terms of looking for alternatives is pretty interesting and of course really important, but it doesn't lend itself to the most epic tale in the world unless you do something really fun with it, such as making it a swashbuckling adventure. But what they did in this film just made it a bit preachy, and in turn it just wasn't that engaging. Similarly, looking at a brand new world is actually pretty awesome. We've seen fans gravitate towards this really well, for example with Star Wars, Dune, and any other sci-fi based storyline, to be honest. So that again could have been something really wicked, but even then they weren't that imaginative with all of the different creatures and how this other world does operate. It was just void of anything really gripping or dangerous or cool taking place, as like I said, it was just a bit of a missed opportunity. Now let's look at the characters. So I loved the dad, even though he felt a little bit cookie cutter. I think Jake Gyllenhaal had the most going for him in terms of having a relatable ambition. He was the funniest of the bunch, and you really saw a true character arc with this guy across the movie, and he was also really stubborn and really stood for something and was a bit of a flawed character that definitely learned the error of his ways and engaged really well with all of the other different characters. But other than that, even though they were ticking the diversity box really well, they didn't go into enough depth with the rest for making you really care and root for them. At the same time, on that point, it does at least try to break down stereotypes, which is really great. But you've seen it being better done elsewhere, and resultantly feels a little bit empty and a little bit dull. And because not that much actually happens in this movie, it actually lets down the excellent representation that it was trying to achieve. I mean, the father-son dynamics were good, but again, they didn't do enough to make them really impactful. For instance, where was the big confrontation from Searcher finally seeing his dad again after 25 years? It was like they were only apart for what, like 2 weeks? He's missed out on so much of his life. He just walked away where was the powerful emotional response and reaction? I get that they had some conflict of having different perspectives and different experiences of life, but come on, there was so much potential here. Also, the relationship between Searcher and his son Ethan was so light touch in terms of having different outlooks, and Ethan being a bit more like Jake Gyllenhaal, and the difficulty that Searcher has in terms of accepting and appreciating and valuing his son, etc. could have been done so much better in this movie. I mean, Splat was a cool character. You always need those adorable and new imaginative characters in animations, don't you? And I actually thought that the character trajectory for Splat was actually really, really great in terms of it being pretty dark in the beginning, where he was basically sending Ethan to his death and then befriending him and kind of becoming like another pet for him, while also being really cute throughout. So, you know, that was pretty decent. And the twist I thought was pretty cool. And if you take the film for what it is, which is an environmental message wrapped around a bit of an animation adventure movie, then I think it will work for you. It was really great, and it was successful in communicating its message to the audience at least. The visuals were also pretty awesome. I'm a massive fan of animation, and I can really appreciate the fact that they did use the latest technology to create something really, really modern, and you really did believe all of the things that were happening in this movie, because they did actually look really, really impressive, even if they were just a little bit weird at the same time. That being said, there is so much better animation out there, and this movie just can't be compared to the other Disney and Pixar classics, and even to other studios like DreamWorks and Illuminations, which recently have made some pretty awesome movies. For example, Puss in Boots 2, Minions 2, Ron's Gone Wrong, Mitchell's vs. the Machines. I feel like animation is at its best right now, so unfortunately Strange World just isn't able to be compared to them. So whilst it is admirable that they did want to convey a message about protecting the Earth's resources, ultimately the end product was something that was really unremarkable and pretty unimaginative, ironically, and was just a little bit of a disappointment all round. As if they focused on making a compelling narrative first and then added all of the aspects of environmentalism, then maybe it would have worked. But because they did it the opposite way, it ultimately just felt really flat. So, you know, those are all of my thoughts on Strange World. But now I'd love to hear from you. What did you think of Strange World? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video.